Salon, one of the sponsors of this event. Basically, we recognize engineering students that exhibit the principles of scholarship, character, practicality, and sociability. We are essentially, I'm sure a lot of you participated in honor societies in high school like NHS. We are the NHS of Civil and Environmental Engineering. You will be invited if you have a junior standing and you're in the top third of your class, or if you're a graduate student, you'll be invited as well. We do a lot of great things on campus like this grad talk tonight. Normally we have giant bridge trips every year. So if you'd like to go on the top of the Mackinac Bridge, this is the club for you to be in. So our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about why you should pursue a graduate degree, focus areas, degree types, application process and deadlines, and then we're going to finish off with a Q&A session with graduate students and faculty. So having said that, we're going to go into why pursue a graduate degree.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. This is Dr. Morse, and I'm a faculty in Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, and I'm glad you're here to learn more about graduate school and graduate degrees, and because we really want you to continue your education. And so I wanted to kind of go through a few points of, what this is about and why you might want to pursue another degree after we've just done a lot of hard labor going through our undergrad program, right? But one of the key things that is that as we move forward, there's several, as we move forward, the type of projects that you're going to be exposed to at engineering firms or as a practicing engineer are going to get more and more advanced. And they're going to be looking for individuals that are able to do some of the higher end calculations, to go beyond what is in the black and white of the standards, and to be able to interpret and make these high-level engineering judgments. And there's all sorts of different types or focus areas that we can go into. I'm going to just go through a few of those briefly in a little bit. But along with that comes, the ability to, earn more money. They pay people with graduate students typically a little bit more, or a lot more, depending on what you're doing. It's you educating yourself, and certainly myself and certainly fellow colleagues and faculty members, we believe very personally as high degree of education and lifelong learning. And this is kind of an extension of that, if you will. It also provides you opportunities to get to know faculty in more personal relationships and industry partners as you work on research projects potentially, and you pursue some of these more advanced classes. We tend to often bring in industry partners as guest lecturers, so on and so forth as we go. And the last one is just to hone your skills. You're going to focus more on an area that you are more interested in. Right now, just coming out with a civil engineering degree or an environmental engineering degree, you're relatively broad, and you've taken a lot of the courses or design level courses, and this gives you an opportunity to really dig into a particular facet of that. If you want to go into structures, or you want to go into wastewater, or you want to go into air quality, or you want to do pavement design, this is your opportunity to kind of dig into those topics in much greater detail and really learn the science behind those to be able to make those, work on those projects and make more decisions. Taylor, can you go to the next one? So I wanted to kind of introduce the different focus areas that we offer in the department, and we have a bunch of them. Civil engineering materials, actually, if you'll just, as I say them, if you'll just click through them, Taylor, that'll help. The civil engineering materials, this is where we look at pavement design, we look at how we use those. We have environmental engineering. So this covers, again, wastewater treatment, freshwater treatment, solid hazardous waste, and then doing that. And also there's, we have a great, a bunch of researchers that study the Great Lakes and how those work. I think go on to geotech. And geotechnical engineering, this is all things having to do with soil. And I'll tell you what, if you have a chance to talk with Dr. Lou or Dr. Baton about this, it's just voodoo magic as far as I'm concerned. It's they do some interesting things with soil. So we've recently, in the past year, have combined with our colleagues that do geospatial technology. And so this is where you can go in and do land surveying, doing both the land itself and then also the built environment. And this also encompasses surveying and doing ArcGIS. So there's a lot of technology that's going into that, and that is a expanding field that a lot of technology is entering right now. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff. Infrastructure engineering and intelligent infrastructure. This is where we talk about our built environment and how we get around, and that includes roads, rails, airports, and a handful of other things. And then a new kind of research or focus area that we're looking for is intelligent infrastructure design. How do we do smart communities? How do we design these? What constitutes a smart community? And how can we design those where stuff synergizes better than what we're currently doing, where it's been kind of over time hodgepodged and not really always planned out as best as it could be or as you'd like to be. Personal to me, structural engineering, and we're have an exciting time to where we're expanding the use of wood in structural engineering, but there's also some really neat stuff going with printable structures with concrete or other cementitious materials, as well as kind of the traditional reinforced concrete that Dr. Osborne's an expert in, and steel design, which Dr. Schwartz is an expert in, and also earthquake engineering, which Dr. Dowden is an expert in. We're all actively doing research in those areas and teaching advanced classes in those as well. Transportation engineering, Dr. Yu is going to hopefully talk about that in a little bit more detail, but there's a lot of work being done, and how do we, the kind of augmented or automated driving, smart vehicles, if you will, smart roads, and there's a lot of different avenues with that. And so again, Dr. Zhang and some of our other colleagues are very active in this area of doing smart transportation. And water resources, and I think we have Dr. Watkins on with us. He's going to talk hopefully a little bit about this, but how do we move water? How do we deal with water when there's a lack of it or if there's too much of it? And we've seen both of those in this country over the last few years, and where we have water in one place more than we need in another place. And if we could just figure out a way to get it back to where it needs to be, that'd be pretty awesome. So those are some of the things that water resource engineering do. So moving on, I'll let Taylor pick up from here.
All right, so now we're going to get into some of the faculty. Whoops. We're going to start off with Dr. Barkdahl.
All right, hello everybody. Thanks for coming. I just put together a few slides here, some of my reasons maybe I went to grad school, and then I'll tell you about some of my research. If any of you end up going to grad school and you want to work with me on any of these topics, or you just want to chat about is grad school right for me, that's fine too. So I wanted more opportunities. I talked to people in the field. They said a master's degree would really help you, so I decided to go back and get my master's. And then I wanted to do it when I was young and before I got married and settled down. Of course, I didn't know if I would get married for sure at that point in my life, but I did end up getting married, so it was a good thing I got out of the way. And after I got to grad school, I really liked it. I liked learning. Honestly, in undergrad, I didn't like learning. I felt it was kind of shoved down my throat. But in grad school, I really liked it. So I kind of got interested, and I liked research, solving puzzles. I never thought I'd be a professor, but here I am, and it's a really good job. So go to the next slide if you don't mind. So what do I study? I study how water gets to your house, clean drinkable water to your house, called water distribution systems, all the tanks and pumps and pipes. I study rivers, how they flow, if they'll flood. Is there erosion around bridges or on riverbanks and that kind of thing? Study sewer systems, where the nasty water goes after it leaves your house. Study stormwater low impact development. So the more infrastructure we build, the less the water can go in the ground and the more runs off the top and causes flooding. And so we study ways to keep that water on site and restore the natural hydrology. And then I had been in the Peace Corps 4 years, so I like to study how we can help poor people in developing countries to improve their life. Okay, next slide. So here's how I like to work with graduate students. If you want to work with me, we work together. And if you have ideas, I have ideas to find a project. And then we have to figure out together how we do it. And then what do we do next? Because research, sometimes you go step by step. And then I can help you write the reports, get it published, and all those kind of things. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. So I think that's all I prepared for tonight. Thanks.
So again, this is Dr. Morris. A little bit about me is I like to study the strength of glass used in buildings and structures. And so when I'm not breaking glass in the lab, I'm hanging off the side of buildings and doing measurements of glass. In fact, I have a project next week that I'm going to be going to where I'm be measuring what's going on for some glass polishing that they're doing on the side of a building. And I had a recent project in Seattle where we were doing some work on the glass floors of the needle. And so while I was there, I got to kind of tool around the structure. And if you ever get a chance to go, both from a civil engineering point and a structural engineering point, it's a really neat structure, and you can lay on the floor and see all the way through it. And so it's pretty cool. And anyway, thank you, Taylor.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to highlight a few projects I'm working on, and I guess point out that, in addition to gaining more specialized knowledge in a certain area, graduate school can also be an opportunity to work on interdisciplinary research. And so I just wanted to highlight 3 projects which also other faculty in the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering are working on, as well as faculty across campus. And so one of these projects is looking at the food, energy, water nexus, kind of an environmental sustainability project, and looking at the impacts of our consumption in terms of its effects on water scarcity, maybe depending on where the food is grown that we're consuming, or where water is withdrawn for cooling thermoelectric power plants. And so we're working with the community in Chicago to give them information about their household consumption. Also, Dr. Minikata is working on this project looking at the energy that's used in water and wastewater treatment as a part of this project. A second project I'll highlight is looking at abandoned mines, which we have a lot of in the UP, for pumped energy storage. And the concept there, if you can look at that little graphic, is whenever there's excess energy, or if we have renewable energy that's generating when it's sunny and windy, we can store that underground by pumping water from a lower reservoir to a higher reservoir. And then when the sun isn't shining or the wind's not blowing, we can run that water through turbines. So it's an interesting way to use water, essentially, moving between 2 levels in a mine as a battery. So just a preliminary study of that, but it's also interesting work. And Dr. Dye is a collaborator on that project. And then a third one I'll mention is looking at agricultural adaptations to extreme hydrologic events, working with 2 small communities in El Salvador. And Dr. Gerke is the principal investigator on this project. It's just starting up. Actually, we weren't able to travel to El Salvador this past summer because of the pandemic. But if you're interested in an international experience, this will be open to graduate students, hopefully each of the next 3 summers, assuming we can return to normal travel. So next slide, please. If you want any more information about these projects, I have web pages there that you can go to. And of course, feel free to ask me questions as well. So yeah, just wanted to highlight those projects and just give you an idea of types of research that you can get involved in graduate school. Thanks.
All right, well, my research area really is transportation engineering or materials. Please go on. And so transportation and the materials, basically we have 5 faculty members, Dr. Hiller and myself, and Pastor Latula, and Dr. Jen, and David Nelson. Move on. And this is part of the lab we use. You can see it's pretty beautiful, right? Move on. I want to show you a few pictures. This is a picture, basically, we are building a rubber asphalt road. So basically this road, is in Dixon County, really close to Iron Mountain area. We recycled about 4,000 tires into this road. This is about 2 miles asphalt roads. This is basically a research grant. We are working with Michigan Eagle. So this is, we received the award. Go next one. With grad student support, you can see grad students really meet with industry leaders, meet with agencies. Like this picture here shows the grad students are meeting with all kinds of people, contractors, state agencies, local agencies, and all the contractors from all over the world. So basically, this is the project we built on a 3-mile stretch in Kalamazoo. So this is also a research project. You recycle rubber from tires. So for this project, we also recycled about 4,000 tires. Move on. All right, the students also get experience, get to learn things from the job site, meet with DOT engineers. For example, for this case, they're learning how to take samples. Move on. And of course, this is another grad students are, taking some course from a road. This is road also we recycle about 4,000 or so tires to the roads. We basically use the rubber. All right, great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Karanen. I'm the graduate program assistant for the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. So in our department, we have 4 different master's degrees we require, or that we offer, in civil, environmental engineering science, and integrated geospatial technology. Within the master's degree, there are a couple different ways you could get it. The first being a coursework master's degree, which is what it implies. It is 30 credits of coursework beyond your master's degree. And then there are research opportunities as well. There's the report option, which is coursework up to 30. You'd still get 30 credits, but it would be 2 to 6 credits of research, or the thesis option, which is 30 credits, but 6 to 10 of those are research. And within our master's degree, we do have some options available for Michigan Tech students. The first is the accelerated program. With the accelerated program, basically you're allowed to use up to 6 credits of your undergraduate work towards your 30 credits of master's credits. And if you also put in senior rule along with these 6 credits, you can end up getting a master's degree at a much, a lot less money than if these options weren't available. As far as the application for the accelerated degree, we do ask that you apply before the 6th week of your second to last semester of your senior year. And the reason we do this is because we want you to speak with faculty members about what courses you're going to take and make sure you have the appropriate courses to take that can be double counted for your degree. This year, however, we have extended that deadline because that deadline would actually be this Friday. We've extended it to Friday, October 23rd. And if you have any questions on the application process, please let me know. For Michigan Tech undergrads, we require that you fill out the application, you submit your transcripts, we need your student statements, and then there is a course plan that you'll need to fill out, and that document actually comes to me. So all of this can be found on our accelerated web page on our website. And then with the accelerated program, we also have the civil engineering online master's degree program, which I'm going to let Dr. Alborn talk to you about more. But I did want to let you know that you can combine both the accelerated and the online degree. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Alborn so she can talk to you in more depth about the online degree. Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. So I guess I want to iterate. This is Dr. Tess Alborn, and I want to reiterate a number of things that my colleagues had mentioned about why to go to grad school. And I was at one time just like you. I have an undergraduate degree from Michigan Tech, and I thought, what do I do next? And had plenty of job opportunities, but just wanted to have more knowledge base before I went off into the working world. So I did that, and at that time I never would have pictured myself in the role of a professor, but like Dr. Barkdahl said, it is a pretty cool job. So as Angela mentioned, there are a number of different program options that we have, and within the Master of Science of Civil Engineering, we have the coursework only, the research option that is a report option, or a research option that's a thesis option. Within the coursework only, I wanted to point out this new program that we have, and that's the online program. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Our online program, you'd say, well, why would you want to do an online program? And part of it is that your job's going to start, and you've really been wanting to get that job, and you just don't want to say no to that job. So maybe you could still do something as a professional working person that you could be able to continue your education. Another reason might be you just really value that education. You realize there's so much more to learn. And that was my case. When I looked at the course listings, there was just so much more to learn. I just wanted to do it before I jumped into it. The online program allows you to work at on your own schedule. Most of our students in the program are working professionals. They work full time. So then they can work in the evenings or on the weekends. It's not like it's a scheduled class time. Another benefit of why you might want to do an online program is that you've started that dream job, and now you realize that there's tuition reimbursement programs. So that can help a lot with your expenses. But I also want to point out the application process. For the online program, it's the same as the others. I've included some of the admission requirements that we need for an online program. It's a simple application to go through and include your transcripts and a resume, a statement, and these personal statements and statement of purpose. You can find more information there. I've included our website there. When you are doing the application process, it's important to identify which program that you're going to be going into. And there would be a separate box if you were interested in the online program. So why don't you move on to the next slide? So our MSCE online program right now is focused with structural engineering. We get into the same topics that we do for our on-campus program. It's just that they're offered online, fully asynchronous, so that you don't have to log into class. The program itself, it's the same 30 credits, which is 10 courses. A lot of students ask me, how long will it take? If you are on campus, you're probably going to limit yourself to 3 to 4 courses per semester, depending if you're only coursework or research. And then if you're doing an online program, you could take 1 course per semester. It would take you, 10 semesters, a little more than 3 years, or you could do 2 per semester, or you could take a semester off because you're going to have some big work project that you're doing or some life change that you want to do. I do want to point out the accelerated program that Angela had mentioned that is available to our current Michigan Tech students, and that allows you, if you have the right courses, you can double count up to 6 credits. That allows you to now reduce your total number of 10 courses down to 8 courses that you'd need to take in your master's program. Angela also mentioned senior rule. For those of you that are not familiar with senior rule, the idea is that sometimes you get in your bachelor's program and you get near the end and you realize, I only have to take 9 credits, or boy, I really want to take another class. And if you do that, if you're accepted into our program, you can take that extra class And instead of applying it towards your bachelor's degree credits, because you might not need those to graduate with your bachelor's, you can actually apply them as what we call senior rule. And that allows you to start your graduate transcript so that you could get a few more courses out of the way. And as I mentioned, our program is fully online, it's asynchronous. We do have a number of working professionals. Even if this is something you don't want to start right away, you could think about it and get a year down the road into your career and realize, hey, you know, I really should be doing more, or my company's expecting me to learn a little bit more. So I want to point out that I've included our email addresses there so that you could contact me with any additional information if you have any questions. And then one more slide, please. If you really want to get into the details of this and you want to start talking about laying out a program, I can help you do that by what courses are offered in which semester. And this again is specific for the structures program. As we expand it into other areas, we'll be developing course planning tools like this for the other areas. So next slide. Thank you.
Hello.
So now I think Go ahead,
I'm
Ashley.
Ashley. Yep. So I'm Ashley Wells. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Enrollment Services at Michigan Tech here. I'm going into my 6th year of doing graduate admissions. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions along the way. We know graduate school can be kind of a daunting, task to think about and then to go and apply. So first things first is the application is free, just like it was for undergraduate. We do not charge for our graduate application. Aside from that, we have really the application, we make it even easier than the slide said, because we print your transcripts for you. So we really only need the documents that we can't readily get from the systems. So resumes, letters of recommendation if they're required, those types of things you would still be expected to get, but we can get your transcripts for you. One thing to think about is for those of you interested in the accelerated masters is that there is a GPA requirement on there. Our regular master's programs, PhD programs have recommended GPAs. Accelerated masters does at this point have to have a 3.0 GPA at time of application and graduation in order to be eligible. So just something to keep in mind if you are considering doing the accelerated program. Something else to think about is that we have, I'm trying to think of what I was going with that. We'll come back to that. So one of the other things that we do in the graduate school is we have multiple applications available. So we have the, if you're going to plan to be on campus, you would fill out the domestic or international application depending on your status here in the United States. And then we also have an online specific application. So if you are interested in doing the accelerated master's program online, you would fill out the online programs application form. It's the 3rd one on our list of applications. If you end up filling in that you want to be on campus, but then change your mind, don't panic. We can work with you to get that fixed or changed in regards to changing from on campus to off campus. And then accelerated does require you to start the semester after you graduate. So those of you that are graduating in spring 21, you would start in fall 21. There's a little bit of leniency there, but for our students that do start or do graduate in fall semester, so say fall 2021, you would have to start in spring of 2022. Right now, there's no leniency on that. We're looking at maybe some options to help out with that down the road, but currently those are the requirements that we have. I believe Angela already noted that there is a department specific deadline. The graduate school does not have a deadline for the accelerated. We just say as long as it's in and you're accepted before you graduate. So if you pass the departmental deadline, just make sure that you work with the department in that regard. Aside from that, really, if you're interested in graduate school and interested in attending graduate school at Michigan Tech, we do encourage students to apply because really you're not out anything. And we say that because it's a free application. You don't have to worry about taking the GRE, that's not required. And at the same time, we already have your transcripts for you, so you don't have to send those. And you can change your mind. You can get through the whole application process, you know, plan to come and then something come up and have to change your mind. That's absolutely fine too. So we do encourage those that are interested in applying to get their applications in and get a decision on them, because that's only opening up more options for you down the road when you do decide if you're going into a career or you are going to pursue the academic master's or PhD. For those of you that are contemplating taking time off between undergraduate and graduate, I would encourage you to consider taking the GRE while you are still in the mindset of taking exams. GRE is good for 5 years. If you continue at Michigan Tech, it won't be required, but if you decide to go elsewhere, which we know that will be the case for some students, the GRE may be required, and taking a couple years off and trying to take it when you're working full-time is not always the easiest thing to do. It can be done, but we've known a lot of students that have said it's a lot easier to do it when they're just finishing up their bachelor's degree versus when they're trying to work full-time. And then of course, as I said already, if you guys have any questions, it's a little bit different this year being in a virtual setting for this. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me via email. I'd be more than happy to do an individual Zoom meeting with anyone that has further questions, just kind of the application process, that sort of thing. So just let me know if you have questions, and I think there might be time at the end of this to ask them too.
All right, now we're going to get into some Q&A with the faculty and some current grad students. But before I open up questions to everybody in the audience, we have a few questions that came in before this meeting tonight. So the first question is, can I still be accepted with a GPA close to, but not quite a 3.0?
So I will, I'm gonna start on this one. If you're interested in the accelerated masters, you have to have a 3.0 at the time of application and graduation. What we tell students is if you apply and say yes to accelerated, we will put you into the regular masters. Upon receipt of your final transcript, if you have a 3.0 GPA at graduation, we will work with you to put you back into the accelerated, because we don't want you to miss out on an opportunity to pursue it. So just know that if you do apply with less than a 3.0 to the accelerated program, there's 2 questions on the app that says, are you applying to the accelerated masters? You'd say yes. Then the second one is which semester are you graduating? You tell us the semester. And if you have less than the 3.0, which we do check every accelerated app that comes in, we will email you and notify you that we're putting you in the regular masters, but to contact us when you have a 3.0.
Thank you. And then the second question is, would my diploma have my selected area of interest on it or just the general degree name? For example, just structural engineering versus general civil engineering.
So I can answer that. The degree is, if you're in the Master's of Civil Engineering program, it's a Master's of Civil Engineering. It's not a Master's of Structural Engineering. So your degree program, your diploma is going to say, you know, Masters of Civil Engineering, just like in your bachelor's program, Bachelors of Civil Engineering. We do not include separate emphasis in our degree program diplomas.
If you do a thesis though, your transcripts will list your thesis on or report on the official transcript.
Correct.
And also, you know, going for a job, you know, when people look at those transcripts, they're going to see the courses that you chose to take under that graduate degree, and they're going to recognize that you were focused in one area or the other, because they're going to be looking for particular courses that they're kind of expecting you to have. For example, in structures, we would typically expect people to have, you know, steel and/or concrete and various other courses that go along, structural analysis, fine elements, just to name a few. And but the other disciplines, or I guess the other focus areas, probably they do have other sets that go with those. And so the employers are going to be looking for those classes, not so much what per se is on the diploma. I would say the institutes that I've been at, it's typical to see just civil engineering, or I think environmental just say environmental engineering, I think. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and then our final pre-submitted question is, would I be able to receive financial assistance through a TA position or research position?
Who wants to answer that? Dave Watkins.
More than happy to give the
Yeah.
general information.
Well, yes, they're both are available. And unfortunately, they're more limited than we would like. That we have, I don't remember the number, but every semester maybe 8. No, there's more than that. But okay, so I won't try to guess the number because I forgot. But there are teaching assistantships. Normally, then you'd be in charge of a laboratory session. There are priorities for those to support PhD students. And then the research assistantships, those come from externally funded research projects. And so what I would recommend if you're interested in working as a research assistant is to start talking with faculty that work in areas that you're interested in, and just let them know that you're interested applying for graduate school, you'd like to be a research assistant. And we're always applying for projects, so sometimes we don't know. Like right now, I don't know what funding I'll even have in the fall because I'm hoping some projects will get funded, but I just have to wait and see. So I guess those are my suggestions, but it is possible, but there is a limited number, so it is somewhat competitive in that way.
Well, I also want to really add a few comments here. So yes, it's very possible. So right now, so a lot of faculty are looking for research assistants or looking for students to do research work, and there are always possibilities. And of course, like Dr. Watkins mentioned, that teaching assistant is also another possibility. But of course, research is more popular for right now. I also really want to comment for the question previously about if your GPA is really close to 3.0, but not yet there. I remembered, but Angela, you may really correct me. So I remember that this is 3.0 is really the accelerated master's programs requirement, but not for regular master degrees requirement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that means the students lower than 3.0 can still apply for a master degrees program.
One comment I'll make with that is that recognize that in general, these are competitive positions. And for me personally, I prefer to see your performance in class that I've had. It's not everybody works that way, but my recommendation is when you start your graduate schoolwork that you do the very best you can, and you also get to know the professors as well during that process, and you might find one with personality or research that you're interested in. And I would say the best way to advance your position would be to really rock that class. And that's usually what I look for first and foremost, is somebody that's not only making a very good grade, but also asking those more intuitive, open-ended questions. Well, what about this, Dr. Morris? Or you said this, but I've read about this over here. I'm going to be looking for going that little bit extra rather than just trying to finish the work as quick as you can. So those are things just to kind of bear in mind when you're looking for those positions.
Okay, I see we have some questions in the chat, so I'll read those off. The first one is, if I graduate with my undergrad in the spring, can I take a semester break in the fall and then come back to finish my accelerated master's program? Unfortunately, at this time, I think Ashley said a little earlier that this may change. They're looking at it, but at this time, if you graduate in the spring, you either have to start in the summer or the fall semester for the accelerated program.
Correct.
And we will sure let you know if that changes, but as of right now, that is the requirement. The second question is, if I graduate with a BS in civil engineering, can I do an accelerated master's in environmental engineering? And the answer is yes. And it's vice versa. If you graduate with an environmental engineering BS, you can do an accelerated in the civil engineering degree. So it can go both ways. And I've seen it happen many times. So that is not a problem. any questions that aren't in the chat or were submitted previously?
I guess I'll just mention another source of funding, which is the teaching and research assistantships are really nice. Perhaps you know some students who have them because they cover tuition and a stipend. But also sometimes you can get jobs working hourly in a lab or helping a professor with some research work. And so those, could be scaled to 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, up to 20 hours a week. So that's another way to help fund your way through the program.
So I also want to point out here that we have 3 graduate students with us, Brian Rivers, Ray Samsami, and Armin Tatar. So those 3 students are here for you to ask questions to them as well. So you could address that in the chat box. You can pop online, unmute yourself, and feel free to ask a question to the faculty or the grad students or anyone else that's online.
Okay, we do have another question. I think this may have been touched on already, but can you start taking courses for your master's while you're still an undergrad? So yes, if you qualify for the accelerated program, you could take 2 courses that will double count for both your bachelor's degree and your master's degree while you're a bachelor's student and undergrad student. And you can also take senior rule, as Dr. Alborn had said, and what that is you're taking graduate level courses or courses that'll be counted towards your graduate degree at the undergrad tuition rate, but they will not be counted towards your bachelor's degree, if that makes sense.
But you're not considered an actual master's student until you've completed your bachelor's degree.
Correct. But we have a number of students that do this, and I think it's really a great opportunity. Sometimes you get near the last couple of semesters and you realize you can spread it out because you only want 9 credits here or 6 credits the next semester. You can tack on some extra credits and get started on that program, get started on your master's program while you're still an undergrad degree.
Just keep in mind that the number of transfer in credits out of senior rule is maxed at 10. So you don't want to take 12 or 13 that you think you're going to senior roll in, and then they can't transfer in. So when all the stars align, we've had students start their master's with 16 credits, 6 double counted and 10 transfer in through senior rule. And that's really the maximum that you can do.
Ashley, I have a question. If you take as a senior rule a couple of graduate level classes, but then you don't go on to graduate school, what transcript do those show up on?
So as long as you fill out the senior rule form on time, it is a registrar's form. I believe they require it week 1 or 2. So I usually tell students, if you know your senior ruling courses, do it right after you register for classes, because you do have to get signatures of the department. And sometimes that can be hard to do, especially if it's at the end of a fall semester where we have, big semester break coming up. So definitely as soon as you know you're going to take some 5,000 level or higher classes and senior rule them, you fill that form out with registrars because they're very strict on their deadline. What happens then is when the registrar's form files your paperwork, it actually creates a separate transcript. So you'll have one that's specific to your bachelor's degree, and then a second one that will be just towards a master's degree. And so if you do senior rule courses thinking that you're going to transfer them into your graduate degree at Michigan Tech, you can also then potentially transfer those credits to a different university if you are choosing to go elsewhere. So they are kind of multi-use where the double counted are not. So a regular master's program, which some students may be asking, what's the difference here? It's really just the double counting of 6 credits. Once credits are counted towards a degree, you cannot use them towards another degree. So that's where we're giving a little bit of a benefit to our current students and saying, here's 6 credits, you can double count.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's another question on the accelerated master's program and the deadline for it. So you can apply, the application comes out. So if you were applying for for the fall semester next year, that doesn't become available until, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, it becomes available about a week or two into the fall of the previous semester or the year. Is that correct? Yep. So,
Monday of week 2 generally of that current semester, the following year opens.
So you can't really apply for it until you're in your second to last semester because of how the application falls. So we do ask that you apply for it in normal years by the end of your 6th week of your second to last semester. We are flexible with this. Really, the reason we have the deadline is so you are talking to a faculty member that you plan on working with to make sure that you have the courses that are needed to double count. So we'll always be flexible with it as long as a faculty member is willing to sign your course plan. Again, this year, we've just extended the deadline to the 23rd because that is the Friday before you can start registering for your spring semester classes. So if you have any more questions on that, please let me know. I might not be explaining it the best, sorry.
And I see another question came in from Connie, and I'd be more than happy to kind of answer this one. So the Accelerated Master's Program is marketed as 1 additional year after your bachelor's to have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in the accelerated program in versus 2 years. What is not normally said out loud or out vocally is that we have up to 5 years to finish a master's degree. So students that are in the accelerated that need to take more time can take more time. Just keep in mind, you can take semesters off just like you would in undergrad, but you have to be continuously enrolled at the graduate level. And what that means is that you have to take what we call our UN 5951, I believe is 5991. I think it's 5951. There's a course, a 1-credit course that puts you to full-time status while you're taking a semester off. And that is allowable and has to be, I believe, accepted by the graduate school or worked out with the graduate school and the department to make sure that students are staying continuously enrolled. If you take a semester off and do not tell the graduate school, you are responsible for the tuition for 1 credit for each semester you do not enroll when you choose to come back. So just keep that in mind, is that if you need to take a semester off, you can, even as an accelerated student, you just have to be continuously enrolled.
Okay, thank you, Armin. Armin has asked me to mention our graduate certificates. So currently we do have graduate certificates available in sustainability and also in sustainable water resources systems. However, we do have multiple, I think it's 10, is that right, Dr. Morris? That are currently in the works and will hopefully be available starting next semester. So more on that soon, but we do have multiple certificates that you can also take either by themselves or in addition to your master's program.
Right, and I'm glad that was brought up. So the department is currently working on rolling these out, and there's a few key features. Like from the structures point of view, we're advancing 5 different ones, and the idea is that we can make these, if you will, stackable. So think about it in that you need roughly 9 to 10 hours. That's still being worked on for a certificate, and so the idea would be that we've collected some of our classes in groups and say, well, you can have a, say, building design certificate. And then we have, I think, one in timber and Tess probably remember some of these. We have an analytical one, and I'm trying to remember the other 2. I'm just drawing a blank on them. But the idea would be that you could, say, start out and do 3 classes, and you can actually get the certificate piece of paper. It's not a full master's degree, but let's say that you're working, then you may come back a little bit later or otherwise, whatever your time frame is, and you could add in another certificate. And if you do this enough times, then what you end up with is you have those intermediate kind of certificates, and then you can actually come out with a full master's degree at the end, if you want to go that far. But some people, that's not what they need or want. And so this is a way to get some graduate level work with these advanced classes and have, again, that certificate of recognition that shows that, well, we've completed this segment of that. And so there are advancements for ones in transportation as well, environmental. I think there's a water resources one, and I think we're currently trying to push through. I think it is 10, and I know 5 of them are in the structures area though. So great comment, Armin.
Okay, we have a question about senior rule. What defines the senior role? Being a 4th year, having a certain amount of credits, or last 2 semesters? To my knowledge, I think you could take senior role at any point in your undergrad degree. I think mainly people take it in their junior or senior year, but I don't think there's any requirements as to when you're taking them. I just don't think in your freshman or your sophomore year, you'll have enough of the credits, the prerequisites that you would need to take to take the courses.
Well, and I want to add to that it's expected that those credits that you're taking as senior rule are graduate student credits or prerequisites to a graduate course. So you might take a 4,000 level course because you want to take the 5,000 level, and you could get it into a senior rule level. But as a freshman or a sophomore, that's not going to work because you don't have that background yet. And it's really about having an open space in your undergraduate program, and that you don't need to take this many credits for graduation or to apply towards your bachelor's degree. And so while you're here, you might as well take another course and see how you enjoy grad students in that kind of a course and that kind of a setting.
We do see it most with students that have gone on co-op or a summer internship where it kind of offset their course like the course line. So they maybe only need 1 course in the spring, and with the plateau tuition and the 12 credit requirement, that's where we see students pick up those 5,000 level classes, is
Right.
because they have the space for it. But by no means would we encourage you, if you're already taking 15 to 18 credits, to pick up a senior role class. There's a lot more work involved at the graduate level, and being your senior year, already 15 to 18 credits, that's a lot of extra work, and sometimes does not help students feel comfortable in the graduate level at that point.
I want to pick up on a comment there of maybe a question would be, what's the typical load for a graduate student? And if you're taking coursework only, you might be able to take 3-4 classes a semester. You wouldn't want to take 2 unless you're doing, a part-time. But if you are doing research, you might take 2 or 3, because then you have research credits on top of that. Typically, I think a full-time graduate student is 9 credits. But if you want to take, 4 courses because you're coursework only and you want to you're on the accelerated program, that means you have 8 courses left to take. You take 4 for 2 semesters and you're done. That's 2 more semesters beyond your bachelor's and you finish your master's program. So just want to make sure that you recognize that when you can take these courses, and it is a big help.
There was a question if you will have access to the Zoom recording link, and we are recording it. If you are interested in getting this, because it does have links within it, I know that we can send out the slides and the Zoom recording. I guess maybe the best way is to email me if you're interested in it, and I will be sure to get you that information. So it's Angela Keranen, AMKERANE @mtu.edu.
Can I just add one thing? So I know that most of you were going to work in industry, and you might be thinking of PE, getting your PE for your field of work. So if you get your master's degree, that will actually help you, in getting the PE, because you have more advanced knowledge on different subjects. And also, I think there's some requirements. If you're like have a bachelor's, you have to wait like 3 or 4 years. But if you get your master's, that period will get shorter. I'm not sure on that, but Dr. Morse or Dr. Auburn can comment on that.
That requirement varies a bit from state to state. Generally, I think you get a year off that kind of your in residence or engineering and training is actually what it's called for a master's. And I think you get 2 years for a PhD. But some of those rules change periodically. Dr. Auburn may know better than I do. I haven't kept up with the latest or other colleagues.
I think it's really state dependent, but I think that Armin has a really good point here that most states recognize that the master's degree will take a year off of your required work experience. I know it did in my case, so, and
just to kind of expand on what Armin said is that when you take the PE, they're going to dig much deeper into some of the technical aspects of design and beyond what is in the FE. And taking these graduate level classes, you really get to hone those skills to where you can go into that test with great confidence. In addition to that, I'm just going to go with structures at least. We've purposely geared some of our classes or a combination of our classes to set you up for taking the structural engineering exam. And so this is an exam kind of above and beyond the standard civil focused PE license to where you're going to be well positioned to go on to that higher level exam that usually is required in West Coast states and other as a precursor to some of the seismically active areas of the country as well. And it just adds more marketability to what you're able to do. Good comments.
We have a question. If we're interested in applying to grad programs at different schools and are interested in research, when is the best time to reach out to faculty? I know that, I'm going to let one of the faculty answer that question.
I'm happy to start with that, but I'd also encourage colleagues to give their opinion. For me, I'm always looking at, especially in my senior undergraduate level classes, for bright stars, if you will, that you're really digging into this and might be interested. If you have time during undergraduate to pick up doing undergraduate research with me, and that's kind of a really nice inroad into doing just moving on to the graduate level of research. It's kind of just very analogous to if you go to a co-op with a company and you rock that job, they're probably going to offer you a position if they can when you graduate, because they already know that you're a great worker. And that's the way I think about it as well. But as far as when, you can always, I don't think you have to wait to approach faculty. It certainly does help to have a relationship. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing, then we're going to have a conversation. We're going to figure out something. That's just how I am.
You might get 5 different answers to this question. If you're thinking about going to a different university, I guess, well, here's what I would say. At least on our application process, when the student writes their statement of intent, that's an opportunity to explain your background and your interest, what area you want to do research in graduate school. And I think it's always a good idea there to even identify specific faculty that you think you would like to work with because of their ongoing and previous research that you're interested in. So I think right there is a way to make a connection to faculty at other universities. And then in terms of maybe just emailing them to express your interest, I think it might be best to wait until you're accepted into the program. And then you can say, oh, I've been accepted into the master's program in civil engineering. And, so you already have your foot in the door. And at that point, just like I said earlier, express your interest in working with faculty. That would be your opportunity to express your interest in working with faculty at other universities. That was your question.
And Dr. Watson, I appreciate that. Another thing that I might suggest with that is circulating or talking with the faculty here. We have colleagues all over the country and and beyond. And if there is an area of research that you might be interested in, chances are we know somebody that's doing it actively, or we know of somebody that knows somebody that's actively doing it. And having a colleague reference goes a long way, because we can then speak to, well, we've watched this student grow up and we know what they can do, and this person is going to fit great in your program. And that goes a lot further than a cold call, for sure. And so definitely be in contact with us. Let us be that resource for you, because we want you to be successful. You don't have to come here to be successful. We certainly want you to stay here and encourage that, but we recognize that, there's a lot of other places to go see. And so let us project that that we're turning out really great undergraduate students, and they can go do graduate research anywhere in the country. We believe that. Well, it looks like we're a little bit over, and I really appreciate everybody joining us. And if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or any of our other faculty, or Angela directly, and Ashley as well is a great resource. And because we want to make sure that you make an informed decision as you go forward. And it's never too early to start. So we really appreciate everybody being here. I'll just leave a final, if there are any last minute questions. If not, then we'll call it a day. And glad you were here. All right.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thank you all.
Thank you.